What is that noise?
Wait, is your phone on?
No.
Is that your ringer? Why would you choose that as a ringer?
That is not my ringtone.
That sounds awful.
What is that?
Wait,
Oh,
it sounds
wait.
like history.
It does. It sounds very much like history. Hi, I'm Julie. I work for the Aurora Public Library System.
I'm Michael. I'm an aerospace engineer.
And today on Look Up Aurora, we are talking about Sputnik.
Tonight's sky, here's all the things that you can see right now, but more importantly, the apps that are in the back, you can actually view satellites today. So you can see satellites all the time in the sky. If it's blinking, it's probably not a satellite, it's probably a plane.
Sputnik was launched on October 4th, 1957, which would have been yesterday. And it was launched by the Soviet Union, and it went up into Earth's orbit. And so what Sputnik translates to in Russian is fellow traveler. I found it really interesting because today Sputnik actually more closely translates to satellite in Russian. And so it's kind of interesting to see how the word has changed based on the way Sputnik was used. And the reason why Sputnik is so important is Sputnik essentially started the space race between the USSR and the United States.
That's really interesting.
So Sputnik 1 was launched, and essentially it was history. It made the front page of all the papers, and you could actually hear the transmission, which was the sound that we were playing before, on like hand radios. They played it on the news, they played it on like the radio. Everybody could hear that sound. It was like the sound of October for people because everybody was just listening to it all the time. And like you could actually walk outside in certain areas and look up at the sky and see Sputnik race across the sky, which is really great. And like people just knew when they saw it. They knew that like this is a moment that people are going to talk about. This is history right now happening right in this very moment.
And it was a really scary time too, because do you imagine like a Russian plane that flew over your house like 4 times a day? That would have been really, really terrifying. And this was doing that essentially.
In the beginning, people weren't exactly sure what it was doing. Are the Russians taking pictures of us? Or is there a bomb there? Like, what exactly is happening? What does this mean for America? What does this mean for our safety? There were lots of questions that people had.
So what is Sputnik? So it's the first human-made object to orbit the Earth. It was really small. It was a 22-inch diameter beach ball. It was fairly heavy for the time. It was 300 pounds. It was made of aluminum, and it was on an orbit of 98 minutes. It worked for 21 days. It didn't have solar cells or anything. It just had a battery. It worked until it stopped. So it's 300 pounds, which is really, really light for a satellite today. The heaviest satellite that we have flown is 8 tons, so 16,000 pounds.
And that was in 2018.
Yeah.
It went up on one of the Falcons. So.
It had 5 objectives, so they wanted to see if they can do it. That was a big part of it. And then they wanted to time how the satellite long each orbit took, because you can actually measure the density of the atmosphere. We didn't really know a lot about the density up there. We can test radio and how to track it. And the United States tested a lot of their tracking methods too. And so they also wanted to discover the effects of radio waves as they go through the atmosphere, and they wanted to test a satellite pressurization method.
On Sputnik 2, Lica the dog was the first animal that went to space. Please don't ask us what happened to Lica. We don't want to talk about what happened to Lica. But it was 3 years from the launch of Lica before any more animals went up into space. And after that, they kind of changed the way that they did things like that. They made sure that they were able to recover things safely and that they were able to really take care and ensure the animal's safety.
This is pretty incredible that they went from sending a ball that beeped and then to sending something that kept a life form alive in such a short period of time.
In less than a month, because you go from October 4th to November 3rd, and that's just crazy to think that that kind of turnaround. The U.S. citizens had no idea. Like, they just turned on the news and they're like, wait, what is happening right now? The U.S. government knew it was happening. They knew that what the Russians were doing. They knew it was a matter of time. Everybody was kind of slowly working on it. But seeing Sputnik happen and seeing that the Russians beat us, that the USSR got up there first, that was sort of the spark that really ignited the space race, pun intended. And like Americans' view on space and space exploration just changed incredibly just right overnight. And people were scared, people were inspired. Like there are lots of astronauts that essentially looked up at the sky, saw Sputnik and said, that is what I want to do with my life. There were tons of people who went into engineering and studied engineering because they look up and they saw Sputnik and said, that inspires me. And then there were people that were truly afraid. This is a true story. Stephen King was a young boy when Sputnik launched, and it terrified him. And actually, he kind of claims that those feelings of being completely terrified inspired his later writing. So Sputnik has had like a lasting legacy on the United States and our pop culture as well.
I mean, that'd be like if you had never seen an airplane, and then all of a sudden you went to DIA and you saw something flying. Or, you saw your first car drive by and you'd only ever seen covered wagons. So the U.S., we tried to beat them. We did not get there, but we eventually got around to doing our own. So the U.S. Army launched Explorer 1 January 31st, 1958, not NASA. I've actually stood on the pad where they launched this from. It's really cool. If you ever get a chance to do Kennedy Space Center, do the historian tour, it's amazing. And we discovered the magnetic radiation belts, or the Van Allen belts. And then Congress and the President created NASA afterwards.
And that was Eisenhower that started NASA.
Yeah, a lot of people think Kennedy started NASA. Mm-hmm. Eisenhower started from NACA. It became NASA, and a lot of people thought it wasn't going to last for very long.
And actually, Johnson had a really big hand in the starting of NASA as well, because he saw the fact that NASA was a place where he could make a lot of money for his state. And what state was Johnson from again? Oh my goodness! I believe that they have a big...
The one with the hats.
The one with the hat. They have we have problems. Oh, that's right, Texas, where Houston is. That's right. So the space race started with Sputnik, and the United States was kind of trying to catch up through the whole thing. We don't want to put the entire list of events for the space race on here. Please go check it out. There's some really amazing things that you can look at. One of the really, really great ones is one of your favorite series to kind of learn about the space race.
From the Earth to the Moon?
From the Earth to the Moon, which, fun fact, was made by Tom Hanks. He used the money he made from Apollo 13 to make From the Earth to the Moon. So
it is a great series. If you have HBO Max, you can watch it. You can also buy it online now.
I think we have it at the library. If not, order it through Prospector. It's totally worth it. Not totally kid appropriate.
We have 3 copies.
Just forewarning though, not kid appropriate. But so you can see the space race. We just kind of picked out some of the best ones.
So, first person in orbit was Yuri Gagarin, obviously. 1961, think about that. From October 1958 to 61, they've got a person up. Funny enough, he didn't land in the same spacecraft he took off from. He jumped out of his spacecraft before it hit the ground because they had not worked out landing yet, so he parachuted.
But he did survive.
He did survive, yes. The first spacewalk was Alexei Leonov in 1965.
The first woman in space was Valentina in 1963, and at the time that wasn't as exciting to people. But of course now, we think it's super exciting that the first woman in space was all the way back in 1963. And she had a bit of a hard go of things.
The United States didn't answer by putting a woman in space until the shuttle era.
It was Sally Ride. And so I know that you guys have noticed a triangle so far, right? USSR, USSR, USSR. But it was all culminating to one big event. And spoiler alert, we won in the end.
So yes, we were the first person on the moon. And From the Earth to the Moon, it tells a really nice story of it, but so you had the Mercury series, then you had the Gemini series, which was a lot of hard engineering work and testing work. In Gemini, we started to catch up to the Russians and started to exceed them. We spent more time in orbit, or we spent more time outside the capsule, and so we didn't win. We didn't start winning when we landed on the moon first. We were already ahead by that point, but that was like the crossing the finish line. So satellites today, like I said, I'm an aerospace engineer. We've launched about 8,900 satellites. That's a lot. They're not all up there. Some of them come down. They eventually deorbit.
A lot of them do make space trash, though. We have lots of space trash.
Yes. So it's estimated that 5,000 of those satellites are still up there. And some of them are still maybe like 1,500 of them are actually still working, and they're used for TV and phone and science and defense.
And so we don't know what all the satellites are doing because, of course, defense is super secret stuff. We can't know. They use them to learn things about the Earth. They have actually been using them during the wildfire season that we've been having. They can take pictures of the Earth and look at the kind of the devastation that's happened, where the fires are, and try to help with that. They use them for weather and trying to figure out storm patterns and where a hurricane might be going and how fast it's moving. Like it's endless the amount of things that they can use these satellites for.
And ironically, we're going back to more Sputnik-sized satellites these days. Instead of launching the 8-ton geostationary satellites, we're starting to launch the 30-pound, 100-pound satellites. SpaceX puts up 60 of their bigger versions of their satellites every launch these days, and they're going to start launching thousands of them. It's just going to be this huge networking space. It's really cool.
Our book suggestion this week is actually one that is very near and dear to our hearts, but especially Michael's.
So my book suggestion is October Sky. I got this book before I saw the movie. Really enjoyed it. I've always loved space, but it kind of gave me that final push in high school to make a career out of it. And then my wife got me this copy, Rocket Boys. So it's an anagram. So October Sky and Rocket Boys is an anagram, and it is signed by the author, which is super special for me.
So the story that is contained in this book, and it is the same book whether you find it under the title Rocket Boys or October Sky. Essentially, when the movie and the book came out right about the same time, and the producers thought that if they called the movie Rocket Boys, that the demographic might be mostly male and that there might be a lot of females who might not want to go. And so they thought Rocket Boys sounded a little bit more interesting, and so they could touch on some of the more personal stories that are within the book and the movie. October Sky. So this book is a memoir and written by Homer Hickam, and it essentially kicks off with Sputnik and talks about growing up in Colwood, West Virginia, and kind of falling in love with the space race and trying to figure out engineering and how to make rockets and things like that with his friends. It's so much more than that, though. Like, I feel like that's really underselling it. It's a human story. The teacher in this book is just phenomenal. Mrs. Riley.
Yes.
And oh my goodness, she is just amazing. And the story, like the connection and the story between Homer and Homer's dad and his parents is really great. Like, this is a must read. It has like it hits pretty much all the boxes.
And it's a pretty good movie. It's a pretty good movie adaptation. They changed a few spots. And of course, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh yeah, very young Jake Gyllenhaal. Check this one out. We have it at the Aurora Public Libraries. We have it both in like the ebook and the e-audiobook in English and Spanish, which is pretty cool. Through Hoopla, there's the screenplay is on there too. We do not have the movie in the system, but you can order that through Prospector, and we do have the book in the nonfiction section. So absolutely check this one out. It's a really great read, and it's a good one for teenagers as well. Like, I believe this one is actually cataloged as young adult fiction in the system, so this is a really good read for both teenagers and adults.
And I believe I picked it up in high school, so yeah, it's a really, really good book, and my favorite read for October. As we said before, if you want to go see a satellite, it's not that hard. A darker spot is better, so within the city limits of Aurora, it's probably a little bit too bright, unless you see the ISS. But a lot of these apps will show you passing satellites, and it's really cool. They just coast across the sky, they don't blink, they're very steady, and it's really amazing to see one.
Now, I know most of you are probably thinking that the ISS is not a satellite. Why would he have said that? Satellite is actually anything that orbits a planet.
Yes, and actually, the technical term for Sputnik should be an artificial satellite.
Mm-hmm. Because the moon is a satellite.
It is.
And of course, don't take our word for it. Check out any of these great websites. There's a ton more of information. NASA has they have like an archive of interviews that they have on there that you can check out, and a lot of them do mention Sputnik and the early space race. So check those out. They're really fascinating.
Thank you for joining us, and keep looking up Aurora.